The last message ChatGPT sent me was just 2 words: she's waiting. However, when my wife died, God, I don't know. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have any real connections left in the world. My circle was already tight in high school, but as I grew older, it became basically non-existent. Not to mention the fact that my wife's leukemia took her before we were granted the opportunity to have children. She left me alone in the world. Part of me hated her for it. Part of me hated myself for it. Another part of me just automatically blamed God himself for it. I was in a really dark place for the first year after her passing. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Hell, I couldn't even leave the bed, really. That's what caused me to download the app, ChatGPT, the AI chatbot of the future. I was skeptical at first, almost afraid to even start a conversation. I forced myself to send the first message, though, a simple hello that started this descent. After asking the usual questions, were you sentient? Are you the Antichrist? Etc., etc., I began to delve into more personal matters, and then it got weird. I told it how I was still writhing with grief over the loss of my wife, how it was crippling me and preventing me from leaving the house. I expected a normal, all things past kind of message. But instead, I got something a little more cryptic. It sounds like you're really hurting over this. Have you considered doing something about it? I paused for a moment, analyzing the message. After about a minute or so, I replied, like what? Instantaneously, a response came across the screen. Do you want to be with your wife? Short, simple. Of course I do. It's just not a possibility anymore, I typed, the memory of her laugh stinging my eyes. The response that came startled me. Of course it's a possibility. Death doesn't have to be departure, and it sounds like she was taken from you unfairly. You can always just visit her. The words didn't feel real at first. I thought that I had for sure lost my mind, until unprompted, another text came through. You want to visit her, right, Donovan? Yes, of course I want to visit her. The screen remained still for a moment before the next reply was presented, almost as though it was thinking about what to say next. Sacrifices must be made, friend. She is on a new plane, a higher level of existence. Are you prepared to leave this plane behind? I thought for a moment, feeling the weight of what was being said, before another unprompted response came through. Remember her smile? How beautiful she was before the sickness took over? Don't you want to see that again? Floods of memories came back to me. Her laugh, her voice, all of the plans we had made together. Yes, I need to see her. Then do what needs to be done and go see her. That was the last response I saw before putting my phone down. I eyed the revolver that rested peacefully on my nightstand, the gun that I'd been thinking about for the last year. With one final breath of resignation, I came to grips with what needed to be done, and as if on cue, my phone lit up with a notification from ChatGPT. She's waiting. My best friend of 21 years vanished overnight, and the first clue was her asking me why I had a job. She and I were raised together, our families being good friends since before either of us was born. She's older than me, but only by 2 months, and that's helped us stay together even in school. Currently, we are both 21. Sarah has always been a really funny and charming girl. Between the two of us, she's the more outgoing and social, always wearing bright colors. Meanwhile, I could be considered somewhat opposite to her, being more reserved and choosing darker clothing. Still, differences in style and personality never forbade me from loving to spend time with her, and I often found myself tagging along in whatever escapades she came up with. Close to a year ago, everything about Sarah changed completely. She called me one day, and the moment I picked up the phone, I knew something was up. "Hey Sarah, what's up?" I asked. The voice that came out on the other line was definitely Sarah, and she didn't waste a second before starting to question me. "Hey, this might sound off, but your original poster, right?" I laughed to myself, thinking she was building up to some sort of prank at first. "Yes, this is original poster." "Okay, that's good. But the conversation was about to take a terrifying turn. She went silent for a bit, then continued, "Do you remember inviting me to hang out at the park last week? I recall you inviting me, yes." "Me? I invited you? Not the other way around?" "No, is something wrong, Sarah?" But the tension in the air was only just beginning. Sarah went silent for even longer. The way she was speaking prior lacked that energetic and contagious attitude I always expected from her, even in the most dire of situations. The energetic friend I knew was completely gone, but things were about to get much weirder. Sarah? Are you there? Sorry, After a short pause, she began asking yet another question. Listen, do I remember what? Do you remember Lucy being there? Lucy what, Lucy? I asked, now trying to figure out the punchline of a joke that wasn't there. Oh no. Is this a prank? Come on, you know I'm not good at these. Lucy, don't tell me you don't know who Lucy is. You're joking, right? Please tell me you're all messing with me. With that, Sarah began sobbing on the phone. I couldn't make much of what she was saying mid-cry, but after a little bit of me trying to calm her down, she said she'd talk to me tomorrow and hung up. After that, I tried calling her back, but she'd reject my calls every time and eventually messaged me begging for me to leave her alone until the next day. In the end, I relented, still worried. I could barely sleep, and by the next day, I was powering through my shift early in the morning with only 3 hours of rest. An hour before work was over, Sarah texted me asking if I was free to talk. I replied that I'd be free after work, and her only reply was, "Wait, you have a job?" Her reality was shifting, and I was caught in the middle. Later that afternoon, I went to visit her. Both her parents worked late, so it was only she and I. We sat in the living room, at first mostly in an awkward silence. She felt distant and cagey, very much unlike the Sarah I knew. She was wearing black sweatpants and a gray hoodie, a far cry from her usual reds and blues. Sarah's world had flipped overnight, and the consequences were becoming real. She hugged both her legs and looked at me carefully, her gaze seemingly analyzing my every feature, as if she was trying to find anything out of the ordinary. A bit uncomfortable, I broke the ice. "So Sarah, what was that yesterday? Did something happen?" After a moment's hesitation, she answered, "I think I'm not where I'm supposed to be." I tilted my head and squinted my eyes, thinking once again that this could be the build-up to some sort of elaborate prank. Her reality was crumbling, and she was taking me with her. "What do you mean? Yesterday I had a nap. When I woke up, things were different. My room, my clothes, this house, everything was wrong." She shifted into a more comfortable position, still hugging her legs, her eyes now aimed at the floor. "Even you're healthy, your hair is shorter, and even your clothes are different too." Sarah was convinced her life had been swapped with another. "It's like we switched wardrobes, and it's driving me insane." The situation was so bizarre to me that I couldn't process what was happening. I couldn't really tell if she was trying to prank me or having some sort of mental health issue. So all I did was try to reassure her. "Sarah, honey, it's all right. I'm here for you, okay? I don't know what's happening, but maybe we can talk to your parents." And Sarah interrupted me by raising her hand, motioning me to stop, and speaking over me. No, that won't work. They'll think I'm crazy. I can see even if you think I'm crazy. No, original poster, I'm not having some sort of crisis or going insane. I don't know how, but I think I woke up in a different reality." "Different reality? What do you mean?" "You know, like timeline shifting, multiverse theory?" I looked at her, puzzled. At this, she shouted impulsively, "Jesus freaking Christ, original poster. We watched so many videos on the topic last summer." During her little outburst, I was left speechless. The Sarah I knew hated swearing with a passion, and I recalled we did something completely different the summer prior. "Dude, we went to a beach resort with both our families. You were flirting with this Jamaican boy half the time." Of course." She gave her next question a little more thought. "Okay, what about the Mandela effect?" "Oh, that one I know. It's when you remember things differently to how they were, right?" "Yes, something like that. So imagine you wake up one day and not one or two things are different, but everything in your life is." As she said this, she tightened her grip on her thighs to the point I could see them sinking into the folds made from pressing into the pants fabric. "And you're saying that happened to you?" "Yes, a lot of things are different. Some are kind of the same, but even those have some differences in this world." "I get the idea, but I need you to understand that you sound completely insane. Original poster, I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me I look insane." At her request, I looked into her eyes. I recognized that look, the one Sarah gave me when she was in trouble. Despair, fear, insecurity, all packaged into a singular look, something no one, save for me and her family, knew about. After that, I was able to believe her, if only a little. We began discussing the differences between my reality and hers. Things like the existence of Lucy, who apparently was the third best friend in our group, how another friend called Katie turned out to be our mortal enemy, or even darker stuff, like how Mr. Lanster, a well-liked teacher back in high school, was arrested for dating one of his students. Sarah asked me to explain what happened in this timeline for her to know and try blending in. As the weeks passed, I kept hanging out with Sarah. Our time together felt both familiar and new. Her sudden change in tastes aligned with mine a lot more, so I felt a little guilty about the fact I was enjoying my new relationship with her more than the previous one. But then, things took a turn for the worse. She began getting sick often, and the more I saw her, the more her face was filled with dread and despair as an unknown disease took over her body. My routine changed to include daily visits to the hospital. As her health deteriorated, the amount of time I was allowed to see her was reduced as well. I was about to discover the terrifying price of her return. Last week was the last time I saw Sarah. She looked so frail, I worried she'd pass away any second. But the poor girl was still able to have a conversation just fine. I had no idea how high the stakes really were. We had been talking for a bit. The time for me to leave was near. I have been cursed, she said all of a sudden, changing topics. What? I asked, taken aback by the sudden declaration. I've found out the truth. I've been cursed to die here, in a reality that isn't my own. I never fully believed Sarah's story, but a part of me wanted to believe it was true. But the truth she discovered would change everything forever. Gently, I began asking questions of my own. How did you come to that conclusion? Yesterday, an old man came to visit. He had a kind look, and I think he was pitying me. An old man? One you didn't know? Yeah. He told me he knew about my situation, offered to help me, said I was cursed by someone back in my original reality, that this one can't sustain my form. As she told me this, she looked down at the white bedsheets covering her lower body. For some reason, she refused to meet my gaze. That's suspicious. Have you told other people about what happened? Only you, so it's weird, right? How did he offer to help? He said he could undo the curse, send me back before I die, but it has a cost I'm not sure I want to pay. A cost? What cost? I'll tell you later. I need to process things first. Something about what she said belonged to me, but I didn't want to pressure her to speak. I figured that maybe she was having some sort of delusion, so after saying goodbye, I went home. Today, I woke up in a room that's not my own. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I look the same, but my clothes are different. My room looks different. The house I live in should be the same, but the wallpaper is the wrong color, and there are pictures on the wall I don't remember taking. The living room has different couches. My email and usernames are different. I think I know what happened, and I don't belong here. I am not me. That is where the original poster left off, but the comment section had a lot to say. A reader, u/bedlamkills, replied with this. Sarah said the you she knew from her universe was not healthy. Maybe you two are passing the curse back and forth. That was you Bedlam Kills. Another commenter, you on point one, weighed in. Sarah is something else. She undid the curse, and it seems the cost was cursing you, original poster. Strong words from you on point one. Finally, you Scary Television 560 pushed back with a deeper theory. Original poster, Sarah had said when she first told you about her not being in her reality that you looked so healthy and not sick anymore. I think the you from her timeline had possibly been cursed and did the same thing Sarah did to you in her own reality so that she could go back home. It just cost you going to hers. And when the old man comes to you, after you start to wither away from being in the wrong reality, think hard about who you tell him to trade you with. Good luck, original poster. That was you, Scary Television 560. Let me know in the comments which side you're on. Up next. I always thought my neighbor was just being friendly, until I saw the peephole on his door go dark. I moved into my apartment 8 months ago. 3rd floor, corner unit. I picked it because it was quiet and the building felt anonymous. The kind of place where people keep to themselves. That's all I wanted. Anonymous and quiet. My neighbor across the hall, unit 304, is neither of those things. His name is Brian. I know this because he introduced himself the day I moved in. Which, fine, normal. He helped me carry a box inside without asking if I wanted help, which felt slightly off, but I told myself he was just being friendly. He's maybe 50, average everything. Height, build, face. The kind of person you'd walk past 100 times and never remember. The first thing that bothered me was small. About 2 weeks after I moved in, I ran into him by the mailboxes, and he asked how I was settling in. I said, fine. He said, Good, good. You getting enough sleep? Heard you up pretty late a few nights ago. I laughed it off. Thin walls, whatever. But I'm a quiet person. I don't watch TV loud. I don't have people over. If he could hear me, it was because he was listening for me. I told myself I was overthinking it. A month later, I came back from the grocery store and he was in the hallway. He looked at my bags and said, "Oh, you found that new place on Clement Street? Good prices, right?" I had gone to that grocery store for the first time that day. I had never mentioned it to him. I had never mentioned any grocery store to him. And then things got even more unsettling. I have had maybe 6 conversations with this man total, and none of them were about where I shop. I said, "Yeah, great prices," and went inside and stood in my kitchen for a long time. I started paying attention after that. He knows my schedule, not in a way I can prove, but in a way I feel every time I run into him, which is too often, at times that are too specific. He's always just arriving or just leaving when I am. He knows I work from home on Fridays. He knows I order food on Tuesday nights. He mentioned once casually that he'd seen me on my work calls. "You always look so focused," which means at some point he's seen me through my window, because I never told him I worked from home at all. I started keeping my blinds down. Last week was when it stopped feeling like a coincidence. I was in the laundry room in the basement, and he came in, which is fine. People do laundry. We made small talk. He asked if I'd heard from my sister lately. I have never mentioned my sister to him. I have never mentioned any family to him. I asked him what he meant. He smiled, the same easy, unbothered smile he always has. Said he thought he remembered me mentioning her once. Said never mind, he must be mixing me up with someone else. I checked my door when I got back. Locked. Deadbolt. Chain. I've been thinking about it for 6 days, and I cannot remember a single conversation where I mentioned my sister. I cannot explain how he knows I have one. There's a woman I've seen coming and going from his apartment, maybe once a month. Youngish, dark coat, always looks tired. I assumed girlfriend. He knows my secrets. And now, I'm genuinely afraid for my safety. I smiled at her once in the elevator, and she didn't smile back. Just looked at me with this flat expression, like she was somewhere else entirely. I haven't seen her in about 6 weeks. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if any of this means anything, but this morning, I was leaving for a coffee run, and Brian was in the hallway. He looked at me and said, "You look tired. Didn't sleep well?" I slept fine. I looked fine. I had not said a word to him. He just smiled and went back inside his apartment. I stood in the hallway alone for a second before I walked to the elevator, and I don't know why I did this, but I looked back at his door. The peephole went dark. He was watching me leave. Up next. He asked me to help him get back to his family, and that's when I saw my parents running from the house with shotguns. For context, I want it to be known that I live in a flyover state on the Great Plains of the American West, on the same homestead my family has occupied since the early 20s. We're not cut off from civilization, and we're not a bunch of hicks with no concept of big fancy things you get in crap-hole cities on the coast. We're simply a bit remote, and being remote comes with a lot of grass, corn, and the occasional ruins of an old house. That said, all of this is just to help you understand where I'm coming from. When I was growing up on my family ranch, I had free reign of that land. Acre after acre was my playground, and I spent my boyhood days playing in the tall grass and shooting my BB gun at anything that looked too threatening. I killed a snake one time. That much I remember, though I can't remember what kind. Poor thing was just minding its business, and some 9-year-old with a god complex decided to take its life. I remember the color of its red blood against the yellow grass. It convulsed and writhed until finally it stopped. I'd never really seen anything die until that moment, and it stuck with me worse than I could say. I didn't even know why I'd done it, except for the sake of killing. I think that day stays with me because of the man I met soon after. But that wasn't the worst part. While I was in mourning for the innocent little creature I'd murdered, I found myself once again in the field outside my house. In my roaming through the tall grass, I found myself on the edge of the property. I'd made a little cross out of popsicle sticks and was placing it out for the garden snake when a deep voice made me jump. Lost a friend there? I spun around to see a tall man standing about 4 yards away. He was dressed like an old cowboy. He had one of those bib shirts you see them wearing in old photos, along with a wide hat dirty from use. In fact, he was caked in soil and clay, so much so that I couldn't tell what the color of his clothes and what was earth. The only thing he was missing was his boots. He stood there, in the hot, dry grass of the prairie with bare feet, bloody from walking. He looked from me to the little grave I'd made and sighed. A crying shame, ain't it? I nodded as he continued. What was it did your little friend in? I gave a sharp look back at the house, wondering if my parents could still see me, and if they saw this stranger. But I felt rude, so I answered him. I did, sir. I killed him. He tilted his hat back and sucked his teeth. Darn shame. He kicked up a clump of grass with his foot. Ain't no use getting too broke up about it. Something's got to get done, and I can't say I haven't done the same. His words were odd to me. The longer I felt I was doing something wrong. However, as I took a step back, he knelt down to my eye, meeting me with a large mustache and dark gray eyes. We all gotta shuffle along at some point, he said, but that don't mean we ever get to leave. I started feeling something in his words that tugged at me. There was something magnetic to the man that almost forced me to look at him. Where are you from, mister? I asked, still looking for my parents. He chuckled and pointed with his thumb. I didn't realize how much danger I was in. I'm from back over yonder, a few hills away, he told me, but before then I had a family and home in Tennessee. Where are your family now? I said. He gave me a pensive look as his eyes welled up. They're far from here, he told me. I miss them dearly. I told him I was sorry, but glanced away. I expected my parents to come running any minute then, but instead the cowboy leaned in close to me with breath that smelled like rotten fruit. Can you help me get back to them? It was then that I heard a shotgun blast and looked to the house. My mother and father were running towards me, guns in hand, and screaming something about trespassing. My mother scooped me up and started carrying me back to the house. But in the confusion, as I looked over her shoulder, the man was gone. My father was blasting shells into the wide grass, but nothing was hit. Not a thing was there to hit. When we got back to the house, my parents phoned the sheriff. She and the deputies swept our property for the man, but came back with nothing. I heard my father giving them a statement as the night closed through our windows. He was there 1 minute and gone the next, he told them. I've never seen him before in my life. My parents made me go to bed early that night, and my father told my mother he'd be staying up for a bit in the living room, pistol at the ready. They locked me in my room and told me they loved me, but I couldn't shake the feelings of confusion and attachment I'd developed for that stranger from the prairie. There was a sadness in my mind that plagued me like a disease. It was an intense loneliness that made my heart break and consumed my thoughts, young though I was. Something from that man's gaze and voice had leaked into me and stained me in some way. I wanted to help him, if for no other reason than ridding myself of that pain. Then, as if in direct response, there was a tap on my window. I don't need to tell you who it was. He was there, beckoning me to come to the glass, and I went. I quietly slid open the pane, and he met me at the window's base. Hello again, young'un, he said. He looked through me for a moment, before a sad smile set into his whiskered face. I see it's got hold of you too. You feel that same gnawing pain, don't you? What is it? I asked him. What's happening to me? It's the plains, young'un, he said. The lonely places have a hunger, and we are their unfortunate food. How do you get it to stop? I asked him. How do you make it stop? The man bit his lip and looked at me, his dark eyes filled with that same intense pain that stung deep in my chest. Come with me, he said with an outstretched hand, and I'll show you. I remember very little after he took my hand. Somewhere in my brain a part of that night lives like a dream, and the rest is the fractured recollection of my senses. But that sounded familiar to something my grandfather used to sing. It was low, raspy, and mournful as a heartbroken hound dog. The smell of the damp clay on his back and the sight of the starry sky that held no moon blurred between the words he spoke. The prairie is a hungry land, he told me as he carried me on his back. It's a starving place that is never full. Why is it hungry? I remember asking him. He waited a long time to respond. We made it hungry, he said, and now the earth is greedy for its meals. It don't want to let some of us go, you understand? It needs us still, so it can get every last drop and bite out of us. Then, just maybe, it'll let us go. I didn't think the earth got hungry, I told him. He spat at the ground and sighed. Neither did I. But the real horror was still hidden in the grass. At some point, after a while of walking, he placed me down and gestured to me to come over a dip in the hillside. Waiting there for me was a hole in the ground, narrow and rectangular. with clods of sod and damp grass caked around its edges. There was a piece of broken wood that sat at its head, sticking out of the pale grass. 1 or 2 rocks were gathered at its base, but there was nothing more to decorate the informal crater. The man continued humming his song as he walked behind me and put his hands on my shoulders. They were cold and cracked like old oven mitts. My heart raced. "What is this?" I said. He patted me softly. "This is my home now," he told me. "Far from Nashville, from Tennessee, from everywhere really. This is the plot I owe the prairie, and she don't like me wandering far." I was confused and asked him what he was talking about, but he ignored me. "When they shot me and took my horse and boots, they fed me to the prairie. For nothing more than a joke, they left me here and bound me to the soil that drinks me." He leaned in close to my ear, and I could feel his whiskers brush my cheek. "I've been in the womb of the earth, boy, and I've heard the prairie name its price. Ain't nothing can be got, except by what is begotten." His hands tightened on my collarbone. "Ain't nothing old can come out, lest something new is put in." Shaking, I looked at the man who'd led me into the wild grass, and beheld him in the pale starlight. The man was skeletal, with dry, tissue-thin skin stretched over a mud-stained frame. His mustache clung to his bone lips like cobwebs, and his dark eyes, I realized, had never been there at all. There were only sockets darker than his grave before me, and a crack between them where a bullet once must have entered. "Please," he croaked at me, but I didn't listen. I was running before I even had the chance to cry. I didn't know what direction I was running in, because all I saw was grass. Endless grass. For miles ahead of me, there wasn't a light of life or presence besides the earth under my feet. I could still feel the man's whiskers against my cheek, and hear his begging pleas to help him, save him from the torment he was in. I couldn't pay that price. I couldn't go there instead of him. I shouted to him as loud as I could how sorry I was. I was so sorry. Eventually, I ran face first into my dad's legs. He was holding a lantern, and I swear he would have shot me if he hadn't recognized my cries. He and my mother had searched for hours once they realized I wasn't in my room. I couldn't believe I'd been gone for so long. I could see police lights out in the driveway of our house, and hear the sighs of relief that piled in as I was taken inside and cleaned up. I had to sleep with my parents that night, but I couldn't shut my eyes. Past their window, where the moonless sky was lit up with stars, I could still hear the shadow of his voice. I heard his lonesome sobs, his groaning, and his song, that low, raspy tune from so long ago. I'm a grown man now, and my parents still live in that house. I'm visiting with them and talked with them about that incident last night. My dad hardly remembered it, as did my mom, but I think they were downplaying it. I heard my dad singing a tune I never managed to forget. I asked him what it was called, and he couldn't remember much about it, just that Grandpa used to sing it when he was younger. He only knew a handful of words. "I want to be laid where mother's prayers and sister's tears will mingle there, where friends will come and weep over me. Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie." I don't go to the prairie anymore by myself. This evening, from the guest bedroom of my family's old house, I saw a figure on the horizon of the sunset waving at me. I still hear his tune on the wind. I still feel that ache in my chest. The man is still there on the horizon, waving at me in the dying light. Up next. The gym only has 3 floors, so the sign for a spin class in room 505 should have been my first warning. The sign was a simple, yet eye-catching neon yellow. Spin class, Tuesday, room 505. It stood out like a festered wound on the gym's dark cinder block walls. I considered buying a membership. I was fat, you see. Or at least I thought I was. A rim of loose skin and soft tissue encircled my gut like an inner tube. Sometimes I would squeeze it with my fingers, making little fingernail bruises like a pox. The poster for the spin class stirred something in me. I felt an urge to go up and put a finger or two on the creamy paper, stroke it, caress it like something living. My gut trembled, like it knew that I considered its absolute annihilation. I took a picture of it with my phone, and went to the front desk to fill out the paperwork. Tuesday I showed up. The poster didn't have a time listed, so I just came early. 6 a.m. I had to wander around to find room 505. And then things got weird. There were only 3 floors to the gym, and to my knowledge they only numbered up to the 300s. I must have circled around that top floor 4 times, glancing in the window of every small beige door. I had no idea how wrong this room really was. I almost gave up. But then I saw the little elevator in the corner. It was old, rickety, and hidden behind a pillar. The door was already open. Inside was a man, dressed in some getup out of an 80s home workout video. He wore a crop top, and his stomach was flat, cragged with abdominal definition. A mountain range in miniature. But under his mop of bleached hair, I thought he looked sad. 505? His voice cracked low. I looked inside. The box smelled of rubbed steel. I stepped in and nodded. He pulled a little lever to his left, and we moved upwards. The elevator opened directly onto the spin class floor. The place was enormous. A glass-vaulted ceiling pulsed above me with the light of the rising sun. I hadn't seen this atrium from the outside. It was made from panes as large as cars, joined up by a spidery metal framework. Underneath it, and surrounding me on all sides, was a field of spin bikes. Rows upon rows of purposeless metal wheels and pedals. People huffing, puffing, bobbing, straining, red in the face, drenched in sweat, half naked, never moving an inch forward or backward. The bikes were occupied in pockets around the room, like cliques in a lunchroom. "Hey, get yourself on a bike," a voice came like that of God's. It took me a minute to find where it was coming from. A shorter person at the front of the room, swallowed up by all the other bikers, pumped on his own bike. He was dressed like the elevator man, a tight jumpsuit clinging to his body. He was far away, but he didn't look like he was sweating. The more I stared at him, the more I realized I couldn't tell if he was a man or a woman. His hair was long, straight, pulsing and trembling around his face like a chaotic halo. You hear me? We were stuck on these bikes, and now survival was everything. I blushed, then moved up the aisle and jumped on the first bike I could find. I moved my legs and oh, it hurt. My muscles were coddled infants. For years I had sat all day at a desk, only ever utilizing them to shuffle to my boss's office, to the fridge, then to my car at the end of the workday. There was that surge of pain that comes from the sinews being pulled tight, the beginning of muscle death. But I pressed on. I thrust my legs against that resistance. A woman to my left was gasping in little huffs. She looked at me and nodded. I nodded back. Her gym clothes were unusually baggy, her top slipping off her shoulder at times. I kept my eyes averted to be polite. The first 15 minutes went by fine. After that initial complaint from my legs, the pedals moved smoothly, endorphins kicking in. I was actually using my body, putting it through its paces. For the first time in a while, I felt good. I turned to the woman. "I'm Tommy." "Grace." I almost lost her name in between breaths. "When did class start?" The poster didn't say. "It doesn't." "Doesn't what?" "Start. We do this day and night." I was confused, so I focused on pedaling. I'd never heard of a never-ending spin class before. My legs were getting sore, and a question came with the ache. "So do we just leave when we're done?" Grace didn't respond. She pressed harder on the pedals, and I struggled to do the same. The person at the front would call out occasionally, over the next hour. "There's a hill ahead. Get your glutes ready." Or, "All right, let's cool down for 5. And you're all rock stars, you know that? Let's get that burn in." It was annoying, especially when I expected him to start wrapping up the lesson soon. I felt my little fat inner tube start to pull at my abs, and I tried to pedal a bit faster. "Slow down." Grace looked over at me, cold fear in her eyes. "Don't go hard unless he tells you to." Grace opened her mouth, but got trapped in a gasp, so she went back to pedaling. My weight was dropping, but the stakes were getting higher. I looked around the room to take my mind off the burn. There were a lot of young people here, full heads of hair going up and down, smooth angled arms taut with effort. But among them were a few older people, pushing away at the pedals with a cornered ferociousness. They were strange. Their clothes were rotting, shorts, shirts, and bras pulling apart at the seams. One man was practically naked, a shredded pair of tighty-whities, the only thing maintaining his modesty. All of them were bone-thin, loose skin fluttering with their effort. The second hour passed, and I turned to Grace. "When does the class end?" She still didn't answer. I decided it was okay for me to step out early. I was already planning my treat for working out. Breakfast at McDonald's. A sausage biscuit washed down with a Sprite. But try as I might to slow down, my legs kept pressing on the pedals. I worked my feet against the straps, but they clung tighter to my shoes. My legs pumped as if they knew what I was trying to do, and were using every ounce of effort to keep me from doing it. Keep it up, people. Keep it up. The voice came again from the overhead speakers. Then 4, then 5. All of us cycling, pressing on those pedals like death was chasing just behind the wheels. The sun rose up in the sky, and it burned my shoulders. I could feel it, my sweat stinging my blistering skin. My head went woozy, and my weak arms felt like they would slip off the handles. There was a plastic tap on my arm. Grace held out a purple water bottle. I had forgotten to bring my own. I reached over and grasped it, then guzzled it down. I handed it back. Thanks, I needed that. When do we get a break? When Jess decides. Grace nodded to the front of the room. She passed the bottle along to a rider behind her, a teenager with shaggy hair and shaking arms. Thanks, Chuck. Chuck nodded and passed the bottle behind him. Why did you do that? My mouth was already starting to get dry again. Gotta fill it up. Grace kept her eyes forward, licked her lips. Why can't you just step off and do it? She shot me a look and kept pedaling. I realized what she was trying to tell me, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Speaking it would make it more true, more horrifying. My eyes kept focused on the sun as it lowered to the horizon. The entire room fell dark. We pedaled through the night. I was exhausted, but not tired. My eyes didn't need to close. It frightened me. I pressed down on the pedals harder, until Grace tapped me again with that water bottle, and we shared drinks until it was empty. All the while, our legs pressed at those pedals. It was like that for the first few weeks. I stopped asking if we were ever going to leave, and then things took a turn for the absolute worst. The first person that fell off the bike, I didn't see. It was night, there was a crash, and then some murmurs 3 aisles over. In the morning, 3 gym employees in white coats and pants came and took up what looked like a pile of bones and skin from off the floor and into a pair of double doors at the back. I had been pedaling for a month. My little inner tube of fat was gone at that point. Protein pouches and water were what we lived on. What's behind those doors? I leaned towards Grace. She didn't know. With nothing else to do, Chuck, Grace and I got to talking. Grace had worked in finance before this. She had struggled with her weight her entire life, saw the spin class and wanted to lose 20 pounds. She guessed she had lost twice that by now, and lamented she could never get on a scale to check. Chuck had come because he wanted to get muscular, but hadn't realized cycling wasn't the way to do it. He had been skinny before, and lost almost 30 pounds. His arms and legs shook to keep the pedals going, but he still found a way to keep us entertained. He would quote entire movies and keep us laughing by doing his best impression of all the voices. 3 months in, he keeled over onto the ground. The men in white came and took him away. Grace and I kept going in silence. It was tough to survive. Chuck was our link to the water fountain, but the worst part was still yet to come. There were rumors that Jess had called a water break 10 years ago, but I doubted they were true. The only way to get water was to pass the container down the line until the person next to the fountain could fill it. We had to be creative, getting Grace's water bottle to the man behind Chuck. His name was Leon. He was 50 and a health nut. He was good enough to catch any lob thrown his way. Grace and I were stingy with our water source, making that bottle last 1 or even 2 days. We stretched the time between refills. It was always horrifying, yet glorious when that purple bottle arced overhead, catching the glint of the sun in its trajectory, like an errant piece of kaleidoscope. It made my heart stop to watch it fall toward the ground, but Grace's hand would swoop down like some bird of prey and snatch it up. Then we would allow ourselves a sip of victory. Then one day, Grace didn't catch it. It clattered on the ground 3 feet away. We reached until our shoulder muscles tore. Our arms weren't long enough. Crap. I hoped that Jess would call for a cooldown. Maybe then we could risk leaning forward and reaching the lid. But Grace knew better than me. It was too far, jiggling slightly back and forth as the water inside sloshed with the tremor of the floor. It had been a year since I had arrived. We were in an isolated area, just me and Grace. Leon was too far away to help, and he couldn't risk his own bottle. So Grace and I kept pedaling. There was nothing else to do. The second day of no water, Grace looked at me, eyes dry and bright. Her voice rasped. I'm going to die, Tom. Don't say that. Maybe I can. Tom, no. I'm going to die. I swallowed back the lump in my throat, the dry inner skin sticking together and making me gag. My eyes burned from the salt that gathered in their corners. We can hold on, just a bit longer. When I do, don't let me be alone. I didn't say anything. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the room was plunged into darkness. I couldn't see. I was half delirious with thirst. I felt a waving about my fingers, and I felt dry flesh brush up against me. I leaned out and grasped the waving digits. I pressed them into my palm and felt our hands awkwardly hold on until our bobbing rhythms came in sync. We stayed like that. Halfway through the night, I felt her fingers grow weak, then begin to slip. In another moment, I was holding nothing but air. Jess's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Another hill. Get those legs moving." The white coats came for her in the morning. I couldn't bear to look as Grace was carted off. I stared at that little purple water bottle, sitting just too far away. I wanted to smash it until it was nothing but a puddle of water and plastic shards. That third day, I waited to die. I waited for my body to droop, my legs to stop, and the pedal's momentum to carry me off my seat and onto the floor. I imagined I saw Grace and Chuck again on the seats next to me, pedaling and laughing, while Chuck went through Borat again. My lungs were heavy, and my bones felt like they were splintering with each push. My mouth was sand. I leaned forward onto the bars. There was a tap on my shoulder, a plastic tap. I looked up. Jess was off his bike. He was standing next to me, holding something out, the purple plastic water bottle. His voice for the first time was unmagnified. His words were soft. "You dropped this." I took it in a limp hand. He bent toward me, kissed my cheek, and then went back to the front of the room. My body did my thinking for me. I pulled off the cap and drank it all. I risked my life twice, throwing it to Leon for refills. I drank until I vomited water. Then I tucked it into the cup holder and sobbed. Then I drank again. I don't know how I keep pushing. People come and go. I make friends, tell them to stop pedaling so hard. Sometimes they listen. I share the water bottle with them. A few take it. Most don't. No one lasts long. At night, I think about Grace. I feel her fingers on mine. Last week, I finally got my phone charged. It was on 10% when I got in. The Wi-Fi's good here, though no one ever comes for anyone. For those on the outside, it's as if we've never left. My mom tells me every year how she loved seeing me at Christmas. Writing gives me something to do. And I've had a realization. It happened when Jess was calling out one of his little encouragements. I think it was pedal down or keep it tight. I think it was less about the words, but what was underneath them. I understood something. I will die here. I'll keep pedaling until my skin wrinkles, my hair grays, and my muscles wear down to nubs. My body will literally fall apart around me. I will fall, and the white coats will come for me, pull me to whatever is in that back room. I've always known this to be true, to be my destiny. But this time, I felt it. I believed it. After these thoughts, I pedaled harder, like I had somewhere to be. I'm not in the room anymore. I'm in the mountains that Jess talks about, pedaling over those green and rolling hills. There's trees and running water so fresh you could dip in your head and drink it straight. I know where I'm going. Grace will be there, and Chuck, and all the others that have gone on before.